All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Anna Hartnett, and I will be your moderator for the First Impressions readings, where characters meet, sparks fly, and perhaps a little romance or resentment is born. And make sure to set your screen to gallery view so you can see all of our beautiful faces. Unfortunately, CJ Birch is unable to join us tonight, but we have a wonderful lineup of authors to read some of their favorite first impression scenes. Please feel free to pop in the chat or leave a question in the Q&A box. Hopefully we have enough time after the readings that we can answer whatever questions you come up with. All right, so to kick us off, we have Cathleen Collins. Kathleen lives in the rolling hills of Pennsylvania with a menagerie of feline, canine, equine, and avian friends to fill up her days. That is a lot of friends. I love it. She enjoys all the usual things: writing, reading, long walks in the woods, to name a few. She's currently working towards a bachelor's in elementary and special education. And for someone that has a passionate aversion to all things mathematics, it is ironic that she now finds herself working in the tax field, and even more ironically, loving it. Whew, you got me nervous for tax season coming up. She is
Here
the
before
author.
you know it.
I know. She is the author of one novella, The Ghost's Host, and the novel Wildflower. All right, if everyone else can mute themselves and turn off your video. And Kathleen, take us away, please.
I'm Cathleen Collins. I'm going to read you a scene from my book, Wildflower, where my main characters first meet. I'm going to read the blurb to set the stage. Lily Andrews is only 11 years old when she boards a small aircraft with her mother, destined for the beautiful Gulf Coast of Texas. Tragedy strikes mid-flight when the plane goes down deep in the wild Ozarks, and Lily must survive in the unforgiving forest. With the help of a gruff mountain man and his dog, along with Lily's intense grit and determination, she thrives in her private oasis. When a simple mistake forces her to make a life-altering decision, she is ripped from her mountain paradise and thrust into civilization once more. Jessica Velasquez has never recovered from the death of her father. The only way she can get closure is to find out what really happened when his plane went down. When a stranger races out of the wilderness with her father's belongings 8 years after the crash, Jessica hopes the woman will have the answers she's looking for. Now I'm going to start reading from chapter 5. I couldn't explain why, but I felt like I didn't belong here, not with these people, not in this place. I watched people scurrying along the sidewalks and hopping in and out of taxis, convinced I was something entirely different from them, made of strange, unidentifiable parts. I had never been a part of that world. I heard the lock click and felt the blast of cold air from the open door, the sound of footsteps on the tile floor, the screeching scrape as the chair across from me was pulled out. I didn't turn my head right away, sure there would be a new doctor or another stranger waiting for answers that I couldn't give them. It was you, wasn't it? In the woods? My heart leaped into my throat, pulse racing as I whipped my head around to look her full in the eyes. They were dark and voluminous, showing mixed emotions as she stared. I jerked to my feet, nearly upsetting the chair as my jaw dropped. Up close, I could see the resemblance, and the tantalizing memories that had swirled at the crash site finally clicked into focus. Jessica. The name tripped off my lips and fell to the floor, a barely audible echo of my thoughts that bounced softly in the space between us. With that one word, my entire world tilted wildly. Sorrow welled in my eyes, threatening to spill over. I knew if I let it, it would fill the room and drown us both. How do you know my name? How did you get my father's wallet? What do you know about the crash? Have you been up in the woods ever since I was there? Her voice got louder with every question until she was shouting and shaking, fists clenching and releasing. I swallowed, shrinking backward as I was overwhelmed by her tone. My body language must have given her pause because she closed her eyes and sucked in a few deep breaths. I'm sorry, she mumbled, taking a moment to calm herself. I didn't mean to yell. I just needed to know. She smelled so familiar, the scent crackling through my memory to the day she passed my hiding spot. My mind swirled with all the things I wanted to say, but I could not seem to shake the dust off my voice to make them known. Who are you? Jessica pulled something from her back pocket, setting Jack's wallet on the table. That's mine, I snapped, surprising us both. It is not. It belonged to my father. He gave it to me. It's mine. I made to grab it, but she held it up in the air out of my grasp. Bullshit. My father died 8 years ago. Tell me where you really got this. Had it really been 8 years since the crash? No, that certainly wasn't right. 8 years was a lifetime. It felt like just a few summers ago. Tell me your name, she commanded. Please, tell me. I could not resist the plea in her voice, the edge of chaos that bubbled up from her core. Lily. The color drained from her face. Did you just say Lily? As in Lily Andrews? That's not possible. You've got to be making this up. Where did you hear that name? She put a hand out as if to reach for me and snatched it back, looking at the digits as though it were impossible to fathom their traitorous behavior. I'm Lily, I repeated, my voice stronger. I was sure of very few things in this world anymore, but I knew without a doubt that I was Lily. The words were whispered so softly I nearly missed them. Where is he? Gone. Her eyes were wells of sorrow, her face pinched with grief, and my heart broke for her. When? Where? I don't understand. In clipped words, I began to relive the days I had known her father, the way he taught me to survive, how he was generous and kind despite the circumstances, why he lost my name to hers at the end of our friendship. She cried racking sobs, fat tears coursing down her cheeks and splashing onto the tiles as she hung her head low between her knees. I talked haltingly for an hour, unfolding the map of my past. Jessica, gripped by a sadness darker than anything I had witnessed, said nothing. When I reached the point at which her father called me by her name, she fled the room. The end.
So I have so many questions, so much tension. Dang. All right. Next, we're gonna go to Kimberly Cooper Griffin. Kimberly is a Denver-based award-winning author of lesbian romance novels featuring women trying to nurture love when life tends to get in the way, as it so often does. Kimberly's work often features her love of the outdoors, Denver, and demonstrates how strong and resilient women are when they are faced with difficult challenges. Regardless of the situation, her characters always work through it with humor and grace and always get their happily ever after. All right, Kimberly, take it away.
I'm going to be reading from my book Lost Harbor, the third book in my Oceana series romances, and it's coming out in February. And it's the story of two women, Alice and Bridge, who first find and fall in love with each other as novice nuns in a convent. They eventually get cast out for sins against the church. And 25 years later, they meet again, and the love that they once knew is still alive. The problem now is whether they can reconcile the different paths they took. Can a still devout ex-nun and an anti-religious ex-nun find acceptance for one another? And more importantly, can they find acceptance for themselves? This is a reading of the first two meetings, 25 years apart. Oceanside, California, early spring 1994. Her first full day in the convent, and Sister Mary Alice was standing in Mother Superior's office after being officially welcomed. Swirls of excitement spun in her stomach about this new page in her life. Mother Superior had left the office to attend to head nun things, and Mary Alice looked at pictures hanging on the wall, waiting for the companion who had been assigned to her to show her around the convent. The quiet sound of a person clearing their throat caused her to turn, and a young novice dressed in white just like her stood before her, only this one had the prettiest face she'd ever seen. They stared at each other for a silent moment before smiling shyly and dropping their eyes. Mary Alice felt like the air had been sucked from the room. Oh, good, you're here too, Sister Mary Bridget, Sister Mary Charlotte said, entering the office. We have someone on the way for you as well. Please wait here. Come with me, Sister Mary Alice. Your companion is in the hall. Mary Alice had a hard time not turning to keep looking at the other young novice as she walked past, following Sister Mary Charlotte from the room. As it was, she bumped into the other door in her distraction, but she barely noticed. All she could see were sea-green eyes surrounded by the thick, dark lashes. Without a single word spoken, her heart would never be the same. Oceanside, California, late summer, 2024. There was no one behind the small glass counter when Bridge entered the gift shop of the San Luis Rey Mission. The shop looked the same as it had when she'd last visited it 25 years ago. Religious iconry filled glass cases. All around, mounted on the walls, was picture after picture of white Jesus, white Mary, white popes, and white saints from every century. She rolled her eyes. It wasn't her usual passive anger for organized religion, she realized. Active rancor was bubbling within her. Maybe coming here hadn't been such a good idea. Bridge found the magnet carousel. Her brother would think they were funny. Are you looking for something particular? Just looking. She slid a keychain off of a peg, looked toward the clerk with it in her hand, and her whole world cranked to a violent halt. Fawn brown eyes with specks of gold she hadn't seen in 25 years met her gaze. Gravity lost its hold on her. She swayed, steadying herself by putting her hand on the glass countertop. Mary Alice. Her voice was breathy. Just Alice now. Alice's wide eyes indicated disbelief. Bridget's heart hammered in her chest. They wouldn't tell me where you went. Have you been here all this time? Mary Alice's, wait, no, just Alice's eyes remained on her, unblinking, unmoving, as if whatever was going on in her head had frozen her body. A moment passed as they simply stared at each other before Alice blinked. Here, at the mission? It took a few seconds to realize Alice was responding to the question that Bridge had forgotten she'd asked. Not here, but in Oceanside? Alice seemed the same. You're not still a nun, are you? Not since that morning. Alice's smile faltered and reappeared, but it didn't show in her eyes anymore. She looked almost scared, terrified even. I work for the Historical Society now. Bridge was lightheaded. This is intense. Can you take a break? Is there somewhere we can go? Alice nodded. The Panaderia. We can walk. Bridge's mind flashed to the little Mexican bakery just down the hill. I can't believe it's you, she said. I know. Alice lifted her hand and then dropped it as if she thought better of it. It was as if each of them believed they were seeing a ghost. It's making me act weird, which is saying a lot. You're not acting weird, but did she know not weird Alice was like anymore? Alice led them along the garden path to the bakery, the sense of which conjured up a sensation that held her in a sort of half sneeze, making her eyes water. Or was it an emotional reaction? She couldn't tell. It was disorienting, walking the familiar path with a person who seemed so much like the person she'd known, but also so different. Do they still serve those sweetbreads? Bridge finally said as they neared the bakery. Her senses were reeling. I haven't had one since I left. Her stomach filled with butterflies. None of it had to do with the bread, but the memories it evoked of stolen kisses that had taken time to work up to, but had become a frequent thing when they visited the Panaderia and its private bathroom. Alice opened the door, and it was like falling into another time. They ordered, and the combination of Alice's proximity and the smells of the food brought a wave of nostalgia crashing over Bridge. I like the way you do your hair now, Alice said, staring into her coffee cup when they were seated. Other than your hair, you look exactly the same. It was to your shoulders back then. A sparkle of electricity tingled down Bridget's back. Mary Alice's hair had been long and thick, and she guessed it still was, even pulled up as it was now. A memory of Mary Alice letting her hair down flashed through Bridget's mind. Do you still keep your hair long? I can't tell with it pinned up. Alice nodded, her cheeks turning pink, and Bridge was 20 years old again, brushing Mary Alice's hair at bedtime before they knelt to say their prayers and do other things. Bridge wanted to tell her what she remembered, but they'd never been good at expressing that kind of thing to one another. Saying it out loud would have turned the magic into sin back then. If they didn't speak about it, they might have been able to pretend it wasn't happening. Mostly they just did things, touches, standing close, kneeling next to one another during prayers, so close that when they turned to face one another, their lips had brushed mid-prayer. Soon their breasts had pressed together, softness upon softness. Their hands had wandered, discovering what they craved to know. Their eyes said things they hadn't been able to voice, like, I'll be in the laundry room before afternoon prayers, and I'd like you to find me and lift my skirts. The words were never said, but their eyes had said everything, until they'd been caught. What had happened after that? Should she ask? It seemed as if Alice was just one wrong question from running away. Bridge wondered if Alice was thinking about it when their hearts and bodies were in heaven, but each of them had thought that they had one foot in hell. Mary Alice thought that if they discussed it, it would break the fragile bubble of bliss, so they hadn't. They'd worked hard to protect their safe harbor by leaving it all unspoken. I'll be right back, Bridge managed to smile and hoped it didn't look forced. I have to visit the ladies' room. When she returned to the table, Alice was gone. The pain of losing her washed over her with the force of the first time.
Whew. Well, that warmed me up. What a reunion. Thank you, Kimberly.
Welcome.
All right, so our next reader is going to be Jenna Jarvis. Jenna lives in Glasgow, Scotland with her partner and dog. She can generally be found wearing dinosaur dungarees, making playlists for the road trips she doesn't take because she can't drive, and complaining she doesn't have enough time to read anymore. Digging for Heaven, the first of her Dragon Circle series, was published in July. and Ride With Me is her second novel. Jenna, go ahead.
Hi, so this is I'm gonna read from Ride With Me. So that's my newest release that came out there in November. And it's a road trip novel about two kind of disaster sister-in-laws who one is in the process of going towards a divorce and the other one is just sort of along for the ride. But I'm just going to read from the prologue section, which is the first interaction they have with each other, although it's a bit one-sided as it kind of gets into. And it's Emma's wedding day, and Lucy, who's the point of view character here, is the younger sister to the guy she's getting married to. So, with the ceremony still a while away yet, and the bar open, but with no complimentary drinks to offer yet, Lucy was wandering around looking for her sister, Joanna, who, despite having as little a relationship with the bride as Lucy did, had managed to end up a bridesmaid. Their mother must have insisted on some representation from the wider Johnson family in the wedding party, and she obviously never would have considered her youngest eligible for that. Enjoying as ever the freedom granted by that preemptive disappointment, Lucy grinned at the figure she cut in the full-length mirrors after wandering into an open, empty room. The purple tuxedo she'd proudly owned for years had always been the plan for Jordan's wedding, but the top hat had been a later addition she found in the boxes of her friend's apartment back in New York. It was a finishing touch she was proud of. The friend who should have been her date, but the Johnson family hospitality was so infamous that nothing she'd said had been enough to convince Annie into coming with her. That, Lucy decided, was probably for the best. Annie hated conflict, and there was no chance Lucy was getting through this day without it. The moment her mother saw what she was wearing and what her hair still looked like was going to be nothing.
Oh, Jenna, I think you might have hit the mute button there.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it was just a few seconds.
I did realize I knocked the keyboard there, but I didn't quite realize there could have been anything important or not.
Yeah, good aim.
I'll just go back a few sentences there. So the moment her mother saw what she was wearing and what her hair still looked like was going to be nothing if not conflict heavy. By then, Lucy definitely wanted to be equipped with a drink in her hand, she decided, as she spun for the mirrors, almost knocking the veil hanging off one in the process. Oh. Lucy looked at the odd little room, the mirrors, the empty bottle of champagne, the open suitcase full of makeup. This had to be the bride's room, Emma's room. That meant if Lucy could just identify which purse was Joanna's, she could sort her first drink, and hopefully she'd be able to work that out before anyone returned. Predictably as sensible and miserly as ever, Jo had apparently decided not to trust any of the wedding guests or hotel staff and had hidden her bag behind the thick curtains that cascaded heavily over the carpeted floor at the back of the room, invisible to any but the people who knew her well. Lucy had just managed to unbutton the soft leather purse, spotting her prize when she heard the door open. Fuck. Moving with cartoonish care, she risked tipping over to look through the gap in the curtains, not sure if she hoped or didn't hope to see Jo standing there. What she saw was worse. Emma had just walked in, and by the weariness radiating off her, she wasn't planning on moving anywhere fast. There was nothing stopping Lucy from getting up, making an awkward introduction, and walking out with money and time to get herself a drink before the ceremony got started. But the thought didn't even occur to her. It seemed important that she stay silent and still, and that the beautiful bride, whose room she was invading, would never be disturbed, never know she was there watching. Emma was maybe a few inches taller than Lucy, with bright red hair past her shoulders and a heart-shaped porcelain pale face, charmingly covered in a cloud of freckles. Lucy had seen pictures before, of course, but none had done her justice, or shown her looking this unhappy. Feeling both uncomfortably sober and like the most awful creep to have ever lived, Lucy found herself unable to look away as the future Mrs. Jordan Johnson stared her reflection down, breathing slow and steady beneath her surely tortuously tight beaded corset. "You've got this," Emma said, marching closer to the mirror, her voice low as she reached for her veil. "Don't fuck this up. No running." Lucy opened her mouth, wanting to answer, but some latent self-preservation instinct stopped her. She shouldn't be seeing this. No one should have to see how much a bride didn't want to attend her own wedding. The knock on the door startled them both. Yeah.
Leaving us on a cliffhanger there. I love it. Anything can happen at a wedding. All right, thank you. And next we have Clifford Henderson. Clifford Mae Henderson, also writing under the name Clifford Henderson, was named after her grandmother, Clifford, who once wore a nightgown to a formal event because she liked it better than any of the dresses she could find. Clifford Mae's novels have received various awards, including a Forward Review Book of the Year Award, an Independent Publisher Book Award, Golden Crown Literary Awards, Rainbow Awards, and Lesbian Fiction Reader Choice Awards. When not writing, Clifford Mae and her wife run the Fun Institute, an improv school in Northern California where they teach the art of collective pretending. I feel like I should do some improv. Like it must help with all the imposter syndrome us authors feel.
It's good for everything, but we
I
don't
love
get me
it.
started.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to your reading.
So I'm going to be reading from Bait and Witch, which is my current novel. It's a paranormal mystery, but it does have a little bit of romance in it because everybody needs love. Here we go. Zeddy's cursed with bad luck. A housing shortage in the Bay Area's Trace Ojos has left her and her 9-year-old daughter, Olive, living in a van. Working as a housekeeper, trying to save money, Zeddy worries about Olive's welfare. When she finds her friend and housekeeping client, Mags, dead, and something about her death doesn't sit right, she faces her biggest worry of all. Mags's longtime lover confirms her suspicions of foul play, revealing that Mags served as high priestess to a dwindling coven of old witches, who are positive that Mags was murdered. Zeddy owes it to Mags and Ida to uncover the truth, but the more she digs, the more she fears that Mags's love for Olive may have unintentionally made Olive the killer's next target. So I'm going to be reading from chapter 4, and here we go. Lost my home, made a mess, all alone, what comes next? Zeddy whisper sang into the darkness, bundled against the damp night, crouched sitting on a low beach chair in the driveway. She accompanied herself on her new thrift store ukulele. It was going on midnight, and her 9-year-old daughter, Olive, was asleep in the van. Zeddy was mindful to keep it down, her fingers barely brushing past the strings. Dan, a night owl, wouldn't be bothered by her strumming. It was the retired couple next door she worried about. So far, they hadn't made a fuss about her boondocking in Dan's driveway. Lately, though, when she smiled at them, they didn't smile back. She couldn't blame them. The houses in the harbor district were packed in like condos. She released the back of the lawn chair so she could stare at the sky. No moon, no stars, just a thick layer of fog. She slowed the tempo, leaned into the minor chords. Lost a friend today and lost my way. My heart is aching on this sad day. The ukulele, turquoise with a single decorative shark, had been one of her many bribes to keep Olive from whining about living in the conversion van they named Turtle. Fortunately, they were still sort of in adventure mode, but nights were getting colder and wetter, and the fun was fading fast. And the ukulele hadn't helped one bit. Olive strummed it a few times, pretending to be a wild rock star, flinging her hair, yowling, yeah, 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 oh, baby, baby, then never picked it up again. So Zeddy did, taught herself a few chords, made up some others. The profile of the elderly man next door silhouetted on the backlit curtain. Her hand froze mid-strum. She imagined herself invisible. He walked past. Phew, living under the radar was stressful. She hugged the ukulele to her chest. God, she wished she had someone to talk to. She thought about Sylvie again. Wild card Sylvie, who'd showed up in her life at exactly the wrong moment, 3 days before she and Olive were set to move. Burlesque night. Her friend Daria was debuting as a dancer. Zeddy had gotten the neighbor to look after Olive so she could cheer Daria on. Daria was amazing. She'd made this crazy, sexy taco costume. Off came the lettuce, the tomatoes, the tortilla, and that was just the beginning. The other dancers were amazing too. Or maybe it was just that she was getting to hang out with adults, feel sexy for a change. Or maybe it was just a magic night, because after the show, when Daria introduced her to Sylvie, the lighting and sound tech, she'd fallen hard. Sylvia was so cute in her plaid retro pantsuit and black Doc Martens, her green eyes sparkling with mischief. And she was funny too, smart. By the end of the night, Zeddy and the Irish librarian / lighter of burlesque dancers were finishing each other's sentences and laughing and laughing. They were so connected. And then it got even better because they'd kissed and kissed and kissed. It was crazy, spontaneous, and so, so good. Why couldn't they have met earlier? Or was the appeal of that the relationship had no future? Sacramento was 150 impossible miles away. She'd FaceTime with Sylvia a couple times since the move, but it was awkward, mostly because she was feeling like a loser, living in a van with her daughter. Who did that? Still, she couldn't quit thinking about Sylvie, about those kisses. She dared another faint strum, then another. She thought having a kid wouldn't change her life that much. What a bonehead. Olive changed everything. It was such a fluke she'd even slept with a guy, but after a series of backfired relationships, she thought it was time to give up on women. Or that's what her tequila-soaked brain had come up with that night at the bar. Why not try a guy? They were so much simpler to understand, so rudimentary. It took just the one hookup to prove that theory wrong. The night had been highly unsatisfactory. What's more, she'd gotten pregnant, despite her insistence that the dude used protection. In retrospect, the unlikely conception should have been her first sign that one very stubborn spirit had an eye on her. The second came 5 weeks later, after she realized to her horror that she'd actually gotten herself pregnant. And she'd gotten wild-ass drunk and wrapped her Toyota around a tree. She'd had to get 5 glass shards removed from her head and 8 stitches, but Olive, little trooper that she was, had hung on. Then, not 2 days later, Papa Allen, one of her dads, was diagnosed with Parkinson's. That's what really did it. She panicked. They'd all panicked. And suddenly going ahead with a child seemed the only sane thing for her to do. Grow the family, give her dads a grandchild, give her own life meaning. So much of that time was a blur now, how she'd shut the door on partying, gotten her shit together, chose not to tell the father. She'd been so naive, thinking having a child would force her to grow up, that all she had to do was stay one step ahead of the baby. What a joke. Olive had pushed into the world 2 weeks early. Said he was still trying to catch up.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I don't know if you saw in the comments, but Sandy is going to make a karaoke reading masterclass with you. That was awesome. And I think I'm going to be a taco for Halloween next year. That sounds perfect. Oh, thank you so much. That was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
All right, well, I'm gonna finish us off with a short meet cute reading from Coasting and Crashing. This is senior year of the Alder series. And the main character in this one is Emma Wilson. She is the starting point guard for the Alder Lions, and it's her senior year. Everything has been going pretty easily for her until a transfer student, Lake, comes and changes everything. So in this scene, she is rushing from her friends with benefits situation to try to grab a quick shower and make it to the team meeting where they meet their new coach. All right. The August air is warm and thick on my skin, all cloying and suffocating as I jog across the quad. I run up the stairs to my room in Griner, a nice dorm that looks like every other building on campus, with fat ashen stone and a pointy top like a Scottish castle. Rumpled clothes litter my room. Most of them are mine, but a few bits of pink stick out from the familiar navy and maroon of my shirts and hoodies. I swear girls leave clothes here on purpose. I rip off my shirt and throw a towel over my shoulder, plug in my phone for a quick charge. It's 7:30, and I need to be at the Lion's Den by 8. I should be leaving now. Gotta shower fast. I yank at the bathroom door, but it's locked. What the fuck? I jiggle the handle and beat on the door. Piper wasn't supposed to be on campus for another week, and she never mentioned when her new roommate was moving in. Hello, I call through the wood. Kind of need to get in there, like, right now. The door flies open, and a short black woman with deep brown eyes and a magnetic energy stands in the doorway. Her brows creep up as if she's annoyed at my interruption, and I straighten when her gaze flits down my body. Forgot I'm not wearing a shirt. You're not the only one on a schedule, she says. Something about her voice makes me want to listen to her all night. She looks as if she's on her way to something, with a perfectly light face of makeup, her shiny hair and side-parted locks hitting an inch past her shoulders, an alder basketball tee tucked into her tight blue jeans, and a crisp white pair of Nike blazers. Wow. Who are you? Piper never mentioned. Lake Palmer, she says, just moved in today. She peeks over my shoulder, and I wish I'd cleaned. I flatten my palm over my chest. Emma Wilson, point guard. Something flashes in her eyes as she narrows them. Point guard? Cool. But it doesn't sound cool when she says it like that, all bored and indifferent. It sounds like she finds me very uncool, and I'm not gonna lie, it stings. I don't even know why I introduced myself that way. I'm usually smooth as butter when it comes to talking to women, but the way Lake looks at me has me off my game, which is a shame because Lake Palmer may be the hottest woman at Alder. I nod to her breast, to her shirt. You date a guy on the team or something, I ask? She rolls her eyes and leans against the door frame, arms crossed, and I have to force myself to act normal, to act like her sharp attitude isn't turning me on when her gaze scrapes over my skin like that, like I repulse her and intrigue her at the same time. I catch her check out my abs before she pushes off the door and turns to leave. You're gonna be late, Emma Wilson, and Coach Jordan hates when people are late. She winks over her shoulder and closes the door to her room behind her. I'm a wet tongue frozen to an icy pole. How the hell can she be on the basketball team? She's barely 5 feet tall. Barely 5 feet tall, and I've never heard of her. She's not a freshman. We met all the recruits already. I grin. She couldn't keep her eyes off my, oh, fuck, I'm late. And I'll end it right there. All right. Everyone can turn their video back on and unmute themselves. I have some questions. And if anyone else comes up with some questions that they want to ask, please feel free to pop it in the Q&A box there. But if not, I have some prepared here. All right. So, Jenna, I'm curious, can we expect a road trip meet cute in one of your upcoming novels? Maybe a newbie driver gets a flat tire and needs to wave down some help. Sounds good, right?
Weirdly, I think that is not a spoiler, but like one of the characters does end up being a movie driver by the end of the book.
No way.
They just really like driving. No, it's funny because I was joking that I always write road trip stories, except I do also, as said, write fantasy a bit more probably. But the fantasy book is very much also a road trip. And yeah, so I do feel like most of the meet cutes I ever do tend to be in some way on the road or something, or forcing people to be on the road immediately afterwards, at least.
I love it. I feel like every lesbian should know how to change a tire just in case the situation arises.
And it looks cool.
There you go. And you save money, right?
Yeah.
I love it. Kimberly, that was quite the reading. Oh my gosh. I never wanted to pray so much in my life. But how is writing a reunion type of meet cute or characters coming together different than like other meet cutes you've written before?
I'd never written a reunion kind of thing before. So it was kind of hard. It was a little bit different. And that scene is a lot steamier because it was trimmed down from
Ooh,
probably an 11-minute reading down to a 6-minute reading. So it comes off a little bit more steamy here, but um it was it was interesting, and having them to be nuns, having them thinking about, the past and what that meant and what it means to them now that they're not nuns, and that kind of thing. I didn't want to give away a whole lot with the meeting, but it was a little different for me.
yeah. I mean, like it's just there's so much. I feel like the reunion is just like so much more underlying tension already, like off the bat to work with there.
Yeah, there's a lot of you're thinking about things that they're two different people, right? At two different times in their life, or actually four different people in two different times of their life. So yeah, there's a lot going on there that you have to kind of juggle.
Yeah, I love it.
Thank you.
And so Clifford, I am so curious. So that you drew us right in, and I'm curious, what is the weirdest place you've set a meet cute?
What's the weirdest place I've what?
Set a meet cute or had characters meet or cross paths?
Well, that has to be from Spanking New, the novel, where it's the spirit meeting her parents that are going to be her parents or his parents, little transgender. So that's a spiritual, I don't know where that's in the ether somewhere in a place I made up where spirits can choose their parents. I would say that would have to be that one. But yeah, or oh yeah, I would say that's probably the most unusual.
And
Yeah.
how does one write a spiritual meet cute here?
You make it up. You make it up, and you just imagine I mean, at the time when I was writing that book, I was thinking about it's an older book now. And it was a little maybe ahead of its time because it was a spirit that turned out to be a boy's soul in a girl's body, and it was looking down at this world where you were either a girl or you were a boy, and it was going, oh no, I'm in
Right.
trouble. How am I going to fit in? So how did I write that? I had an omniscient narrator who was able to be in everybody's thoughts before conception, was able to be in everybody's thoughts and see everything going on and looking at their future. So it was just this whole world I just made up. I have that kind of brain sometimes that does that.
I love
I don't
it.
know.
I feel like everyone's characters meetings was very different today.
Yeah.
And so Kathleen, yours was very intense and kind of like Kimberly's had so much already underlying tension there. Wow. Can you tell us about I'm curious, how do you, or do you at all portray any attraction in a meet cute like that with your characters meeting in such an intense way? Like, is there any way to fit in attraction there, or do you kind of save that for chapters to come?
So, I mean, it's kind of, there's a little bit before that, but it isn't necessarily the characters meeting. It's one character, Lily sees Jessica. Jessica doesn't know she's there.
Gotcha.
So that's when the attraction starts to build. I feel like that there's just so much more to the story. It's hard to kind of pull it all into one little scene, but that was their actual meeting.
Yeah. I mean, you pulled us in for sure. It's just like the intensity of that, like it was like whip quick. And yeah. So how long does that scene last for? Like that conversation of theirs, that first interaction?
It's not a whole lot longer than what I read, to be
Uh,
perfectly honest. But then it just builds from there. It's Jessica can't let it end that way. She still
right.
needs to know more.
Of course. A lot more, it sounds like.
Definitely.
Well, there are all sorts of different meet cutes, but in general, there are pull, where the two characters are off the bat instantly drawn to one another, or push, where they are repelling each other in some way, shape, or form, or push-pull, where maybe one is attracted to the other and the other one is kind of keeping them at arm's length. Do you guys have a favorite meet cute that you write, or one that you enjoy reading the most? Jenna, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think I realize like a slight pattern in meet cutes I've written so far in that I quite enjoy I do like an enemies to lovers situation in general, or people who have like some sort of tension there. But I really enjoy, as with this one, a wee bit getting to put characters in a situation where they would normally maybe be at odds, but in this case they're not, maybe because they don't know everything about each other or something like that, like, or they don't actually know what the identities are. Or in this case, someone doesn't know someone else is there and is like witnessing a private moment, and so has this insight that they wouldn't have had otherwise. They're just going, "Oh, I am obviously not going to like the sort of like trophy wife of the brother that I don't like." But then it's like, "Oh, actually, oh, that's a shame." Like I like, yeah, like forcing the sort of like extra start moment where the mute cute gets to be like a different side to what most of the rest of the tension is, I guess.
Yeah, I love a good enemies to lovers myself, so I feel that. Clifford, what about you?
Well, I don't write romance so much, although my books all have romance. So I have sort of a different, I'm usually in first person or deep third. So you just get the one character's perspective, really. And it's usually pretty quick. They right away know that they feel something, and that they feel something. But because I'm often not writing from the other person's perspective, you just have to get it all through the one character of what they're feeling. And I usually have them know pretty quick, because that's how it happened for me. I knew pretty quick. I was like, yep, that's my wife right there. She doesn't know it yet, but I know it. So
Decisive. I like
yeah, pretty decisive. Yeah. Yeah.
it. Kathleen, what about you?
I kind of like the push pull. I like kind of like that inner war where, you want something so badly, but you're not sure if you should go for it. Um, and then maybe, the other person is not quite sure they can handle it. Uh, Sounds a lot like real life.
Yeah, exactly. Finding every reason to say no type of thing, and the other person is all yes.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Yep.
Create some good tension there for sure. And Kimberly.
I like them all. I didn't used to like the push too much, because I don't like that kind of tension right away. For me, like
Yeah.
I'm averse to having that kind of thing in my life, like right off the bat, and then it'll happen. But even that I like now. I've started to really get into kind of the Ice Queen kind of thing, and the people that they've impacted, that kind of thing.
Impacted.
Yeah, it's just
I'm so sorry, my dog is making
oh,
noises.
oh,
Little cameo.
yeah.
Getting upset.
Well, yeah, it's hard not to fall for an Ice Queen. They
Right.
have a way about them for sure. And yeah, I think in my book, Coasting and Crashing is a bit of a push-pull. Emma, my main character, kind of loves to like dive head first into things, and Lake is a little more reserved and is like, you are on a different level. No, thank you. So that's been a fun one to write. I feel like normally I go for the pull. But yeah, I'm with Kathleen. The push-pull is pretty fun. Um, but we're kind of running out of time here. Does anyone else have any questions or anything they want to add before we close this meet cute conversation? No? All right. Well,
Sounds like we have some good reading to coming up.
right. Exactly. We need to find out what happens here. Well, I hope everyone stays warm in this weather, and I appreciate you all giving us your awesome readings, and everyone who is hanging out with us tonight. And yeah, stay tuned for more Bookathon madness coming up. Cheers, y'all.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.